first episode of SHU Unsolved. I'm Eckert, and on this show, yours truly will be telling my panel a true crime story that is unsolved, and they can comment on it and discuss it. For our first episode, we are going to talk about the mysterious D.B. Cooper airplane hijacking case, which has been unsolved since 1971. But first, how about we have my panel introduce themselves?
Well, I'm Cooper Tennant. No relation to D.B. Cooper, of course, but nevertheless, very excited to talk about this unsolved case. Claire?
And I'm Claire Wolfe. I've never heard about this case, but as a lover of crime and cop and like drama shows, I'm ready to dive in, so let's go.
All right, let's get started. According to the FBI, on November 24th, 1971, a man who said his name was Dan Cooper bought a one-way ticket on Northwest Orient Airlines in Portland, Oregon. The flight number 305, intended destination, was Seattle, Washington, but no one expected what was going to happen next. Cooper was described as a man in his mid-40s wearing a suit with a black tie. The stewardess remembered that while Cooper was waiting for the plane to take off, he ordered a bourbon and soda, which really, does that say anything to you guys?
He sounds like a pretty boring guy, I'm being honest with you.
See, I was just about to say, he sounds old-fashioned and classy.
Yeah,
Who orders a bourbon on a
you
plane?
could say it's boring, because he's just a dude with like a suit. He's like 40, and he's ordering like a bourbon. Like, come on.
Well, it is also the 70s, and like alcohol was very different back then.
That's true.
There's very different things happening in
People
the 70s.
wore suits. Everybody wore suits.
Yes, people wore suits and they
Let's go
walked
back.
around, not like that stuff. But shortly after the plane took off, Cooper handed the flight attendant a note. But instead of reading it immediately, she shoved it into her pocket and thought nothing of it. Being at this time, man who traveled alone at this time, would do this sort of thing, which is sort of weird, being the whole Me Too thing, men just being like, okay, here, meet me in my hotel room. Like,
Was this that common, though?
I would think so.
It
I
was
feel
common
like-
practice.
Oh, what? Oh, man.
I mean, if it was common practice enough for a stewardess to receive a note and just not even look at it, like, she didn't see it as a threat. She was just like, oh, this dude's hitting on me. Okay.
Oh, okay.
You know,
Sure.
not important enough to read at the moment.
Well, of course, yes.
Yeah, but the next time she passed by Cooper, he asked her to come closer so she could read the note that he gave her,
Oh, my.
and warned that he had a bomb, motioning to the suitcase on his lap.
Yeah.
She then read the note, and it said, "I have a bomb." A little while later, when the Cooper asked to sit with her yet again, reminding that he had a bomb, he opened up the cheap suitcase, revealing red wires and colored sticks. He then commanded her to go to the cockpit and tell the pilots, and he demanded 4 parachutes, food, and $200,000 in $20 bills in exchange for the safe release of other passengers.
Well,
And
wait,
the
hold
one
up.
thing-
Wait, I'm so sorry. 4 parachutes? There's one guy.
I don't know.
Maybe he knew that there were only 4 parachutes on every plane, and he didn't want anybody to follow him.
Are there only 4 parachutes on every
I
plane?
don't
That
know.
seems like an
There
issue.
wasn't- At this time, there wasn't even parachutes, at all, because, safety regulations. I think at this time, a lot of planes didn't have seat belts. It was very
People
lax.
smoked on planes.
Yes, they did. It was very different from
different,
what we
yeah.
see airplanes today.
And obviously it might not have been a bomb, but he got something that looked like a bomb under the plane, so TSA
Yeah, he
is...
probably just got, some, TNT from, a Halloween store and was like, here, here's my bomb. Let's go.
Props for subtlety, though,
Yeah,
you
wires
know?
and sticks.
Don't make a big deal. Just slip a little note.
Yeah.
It's like doing the $20 bill handshake. Just slip a
Exactly.
little, I got a bomb, you know?
Exactly.
Yeah, but one thing that stood out to everyone who read the note is that he ended it with no funny business. Like any old man would write, no funny business.
Well, I mean, the bomb wasn't serious enough. The no funny business note, that's what makes me take him seriously.
Yeah.
Bomb on a plane, no biggie.
Oh, see,
but
what? If somebody said no funny business, I immediately think you're doing something hilarious. I immediately question your credibility. I'm like, okay, you're not that serious. That's so interesting.
Okay. So the plane did land in Seattle, and Cooper exchanged the 36th passenger for the money, food, and parachutes. Although the two stewardess, which that's what they called flight attendants back then, the pilot, the flight engineer, and the first officer remained on board. The plane then took off with a course set by Cooper to Mexico City.
Oh.
Cooper would not reach his intended destination in weird fashion. No one ends in their intended destination. But 45 minutes into the flight, Cooper the flight was what he said that was a little bit after 8 p.m. at night, somewhere between Seattle and Reno, Nevada. Cooper jumped out from the plane, with parachutes and money,
Parachutes,
never to be seen again.
But why? I still don't understand 4 parachutes.
Yeah,
This is one person.
because at first I was like, maybe he wants 4 parachutes because that's all they have on the plane and he doesn't want people to follow them. But he landed, got the money, took off again. Maybe, yeah, I don't know.
And then he jumps, leaving 4 or 6, however many people were there,
Yeah.
as witnesses. To be like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, that guy parachuted right over Paraguay. I don't know where Paraguay
The
is.
parachutes make sense because he wants to jump out of the plane.
Sure.
But the number of parachutes does not make any sense.
Was he a very wide person? Like, did he
Did he need
need 4
multiple
parachutes?
That's
Yeah.
interesting.
It's strangely that when the plane did land, authorities did find that Cooper only took 2 out of the 4 parachutes that he requested, and he left his black tie on the seat.
Well,
Which-
yeah, you can't. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it was a
parachute with
clip-off
tie,
one
yeah.
too, so it was like,
Oh, it's cheap.
Oh,
just
boo.
imagine nowadays if we
This guy
saw this
stinks.
dude just being like, okay, let's just go.
You've got all this money. You better be buying a new tie. That better be the
Yes.
first
Oh,
thing.
yeah.
Not
Oh,
a
yeah.
clip-on.
And it said that
not
it
one
was
of
from
those sad
JCPenney
clip-ons.
too, so he better be going to look for some Gucci or
Yeah.
something.
Men's Warehouse, at the very least.
Men's Warehouse,
Yes,
indeed.
Men's Warehouse.
Highly recommend.
Yes. But before we go into the theories about who D.B. Cooper is, because there's still no identity about who he is, there's a bit more information you should know.
Oh, good.
9 years after the D.B. Cooper hijacking, just north of Portland, Oregon, on the Columbia River at an inlet beach known as Tina Bar, a young boy named Brian Ingram uncovered 3 bundles of cash that were still intact, which were later learned that it was a total of $5,800, and after the FBI ran the serial numbers, it was concluded that the serial numbers were the ones that matched the ones that were given to Cooper.
How much money did D.B. Cooper take?
So he took $200,000 in $20 bills, and the ones that they found was $5,800.
So there's like extra money that he stashed
or like
there.
the money flew out, like in like if you'd seen like cartoons where it's like you jump out and like the money's flying everywhere and like trying to grab it and everything.
Well, yeah, they do that in Family Guy.
Yeah, of course.
Yes.
See, you assumed that he hid it somewhere. I just assumed that he dropped it. And,
Oh,
like,
what?
It fell into like a stream and
Oh
went
my
down
gosh,
the river.
he is the worst like burglar ever. If you drop money,
I mean, let's see, $200 something thousand in $20 bills. That's a lot of heft to carry.
With inflation,
That's what the
because this was
parachute
1971
Oh,
too.
true,
Because that was a little bit, probably more towards $1 million at that time with
True.
inflation.
true.
yes, inflation,
I don't
which
know.
I know
'cause
nothing about.
5,000 nowadays, like if someone's robbing something, maybe that's enough to store somewhere. But $5,000 in the 70s is like, it's a lot of money. You wouldn't just go hiding that in a river.
Well, it's a lot of money now.
Well,
Do you
yeah.
have $500,000 on you?
No, but
It's a lot of money.
It was more then.
Jeez.
It was
Okay,
more then.
continue.
Continue, please.
Also, there's a reason why D.B. Cooper is not called Dan Cooper as he put on the ticket. D.B. Cooper was due to the police searching for a Dan Cooper into the criminal records, thinking that he'd use his real name because police thought, oh yeah, he'd be stupid enough to do that. But they had no luck. However, the police did find a man named D.B. Cooper in their records, and for a very short time was considered a suspect, was ruled out, unfortunately. And then someone leaked this information to the press, as they do, and the name caught on, and from that point, it stuck. So that's how it happened, because the press was like, okay, here we go.
So D.B. Cooper is a fake name.
Yes.
So his name isn't actually D.B. Cooper.
Yes.
That's interesting because I'd only ever heard the name D.B. Cooper, so I just assumed that was actually his name, D.B. Cooper.
That's not a far off guess.
No, I mean I was for a moment there I was like, well, I'm glad that he kept one thing, and I was happy it was the name Cooper, but
Yeah.
he didn't even keep that.
What if his first name's like Walter or something?
couldn't
like
see
you
a
never suspect somebody who's named Walter
To
is
hijack
gonna-
a plane.
Exactly.
And,
Maybe like a Danny, sure.
Danny, yeah.
Daniel or like
Or Walter.
or like a Richard. Oh yeah, Richard, yes.
Yeah.
Always be suspicious of Richard.
I would agree.
But Walter, nah.
Nah.
Yes. So now we're going to get into the theories. I am going to say that there are a multitude of theories that were being considered. I chose 4 out of sake of time and the sort of like how it's going to work. So for our first theory is that D.B. Cooper died in the plane, which seems very logical. The FBI considers this as a possibility, as it could be the obvious case. At first, the FBI did think that Cooper did have paratrooper experience because this was like right near around the Vietnam War, Korean War, all those stuff. So people at that time at his age, could have that experience. And so it would be like a person jumping out of planes, which that's just a thing to consider. But after further investigation, they realized Cooper could possibly did not have that type of training, with the factor of weather conditions not being that great for jumping out of planes. In my opinion, there is no time of jumping out of a plane is a good idea.
I would agree.
And it was at night and it was raining, so all those conditions considered.
What was it in like a, I don't remember where it was. Was it like a forest or something? Or?
They said it was between Reno and Seattle. So it was like right in that area.
That's pretty, you're either mountains or you're desert out there.
Yeah.
So it's pretty, oof.
Yeah. So here's an excerpt from Special Agent Carr, who is a retired FBI agent. He said, "We originally thought that Cooper was an experienced jumper, perhaps even a paratrooper. We concluded after a few years that this was simply not true. No experienced parachutist would have had jumped in the pitch black night, in the rain, with a 200-mile-an-hour wind in his face, wearing loafers and a trench coat. It was simply too risky. He also missed that his reserve chute was only for training and had been sewn shut, something a skilled skydiver would have checked."
So he was just kind of like dumb.
Can you imagine if they weren't, if they were landing or something and that's when he decided to jump out, you're 5 feet off the ground because it's pitch black and he just jumps out.
You don't even notice.
Oh my gosh.
This guy
This guy's just not thinking.
He got real lucky.
He did.
I'm gonna say that DB Cooper got real lucky because you just fake a bomb.
Yeah.
You don't even have a real bomb. You go into a plane. Someone could have been on the plane that was that's not real. Prove it. It's like blow yourself up. I dare you.
Oh.
And then he actually gets the money.
Sure.
But then he takes off again, and he jumps out of a plane in pitch black like an idiot with wind in his face, right?
200-mile-an-hour wind.
Well, and why would you, what I don't understand is, why would you jump out of the second plane? If you waited for the first one to depart with, again, multiple witnesses, when people get off this plane, the passengers of the first plane, when they get off, they're probably going to be like, this crazy maniac told us he has a bomb. Nobody's investigating. Nobody's going after that second plane. No cops or air patrol or anything is going after that second plane.
You'd think.
Yeah, so why wouldn't you just wait for that second plane to land safely in Mexico City?
And just follow. Follow the plane.
Yeah.
Send another plane, follow the second plane that he's on, just in case he does jump, and then be like, oh, there's where he landed, let's go grab him.
Exactly.
It was the 70s, so they didn't have
That's
the
true.
secret agent.
They need us on the task force.
Yeah. This is the new task force now. We are now discovering it.
I wouldn't let a DB Cooper happen.
Yes.
I'm different.
Well, they can't do it now because of all the things that have happened in the past couple of years.
Yeah.
9/11. That's the big one.
That is a big one.
Sure.
Yes. So let's get on to our first actual suspect, Richard Mccoy. He was and is still a favorite subject of the FBI to this day. Mccoy also successfully hijacked a plane, but this was in 1972, and successfully escaped, parachuting with $500,000, all while he was a law student at BYU.
Wants to say oh, I don't have time for that, I don't have the energy. This guy was a law student,
Yes.
a law student, and found a way to hijack a plane. I'm not saying what he did was right.
Yeah.
But
Impressive.
yeah, do not say that you're slacking off oh, I don't want to write that paper or something. This dude was doing it.
I'm interested in the fact that this wasn't a one-off thing. People in the 70s were hijacking planes, stealing money, and then jumping
we don't
out
have
of
those
them.
protections. I don't think we had Homeland Security. We don't have the TSA.
Yeah.
We had nothing back
Oh,
then.
that's a good point.
People are just jumping out of planes.
Man, what for pastime.
The 70s, man.
The 70s were wild, man.
Yeah, but the differences between him and Cooper is that he was eventually captured, just days after hijacking due to the amount of evidence he left behind. An avid skydiver, McCoy also happened to be a Vietnam War veteran and former Green Beret helicopter pilot. So he definitely had the plane jumping experience that Cooper would have had. McCoy was convicted the same year and was in jail until 1974. When he broke out of jail,
Nice.
he was able to evade capture for 3 months when he was killed in a shootout with the FBI. However, even though he was the top suspect, he has been ruled out to the fact that he did not match the physical descriptions that the two flight attendants had, because they did have those eyewitnesses. Even though 36 passengers depart, they have 6 people. So
See, and that brings up my point again. Why wouldn't you say when we get off the first plane and, everybody's left or whatever, even if those people are on the second plane, there's no phone, there's no, the pilot couldn't be like, hey, we've got a description of this guy, go look for this guy in Mexico City.
Yeah.
Just doesn't make sense.
They took off from the airport without anybody else getting on. So I'm assuming there was some police presence, they let them know.
Yeah.
But, there has to be a reason as to why they didn't, follow the plane. But like, why wouldn't you? You know what I mean? Like, and there were cameras. No one
Sure.
took a picture.
Maybe there's like an inside source that like a cop was like, oh yeah, you're up there, like you're getting on the second plane, and he knew what this Booker or Walter, whatever he was doing, and like purposely didn't look at the second plane. But the tie, he left behind that random or not Booker, Cooper. The Cooper guy left behind a tie. Couldn't they do some kind of like fingerprint, or was that before a fingerprint
That was before fingerprinting. A lot of the stuff that we're used to today, they didn't have that. I don't think, like, I remember seeing stuff, like, video surveillance wasn't even around until the 1980s. So this stuff, possibly, and they didn't have Instagram or anything, so they couldn't have, like, done that unless they've kept it and they found DNA, which, from my research, they simply haven't been able to find it.
If you're gonna commit a crime, do it in the 70s.
Yeah, honestly.
Like, there's, you've got enough time. You can do law and still figure out how to hijack a plane.
People were doing stuff in the 70s.
People were doing stuff in the 70s. That is a statement, my friend.
All right. So now we're going to go to our next suspect,
Okay.
Kenneth Christensen. He was a paratrooper in World War II, which would have given him the experience he needed to jump out of planes, a la Band of Brothers. After leaving the military, Christensen worked as a flight purser and mechanic for the same airline that Cooper has used for the daring escape, the Northwest Orient. Other similarities including buying a house shortly after the hijacking, his love of bourbon, which was the choice drink of D.B. Cooper.
That's it.
Even Christensen's brother Lyle was convinced Christensen was Cooper, even to the point where he was wanting Nora Ephron, the director of movies such as Sleepless in Seattle and You Got Mail, classic romantic comedies, to write a movie about him solving the case. Lyle remembers on the deathbed of his brother, Kenneth told him, quote, "There is something you should know, but I cannot tell you," which Lyle interpreted as a confession. But the FBI does not think he could have been Cooper, stating that since Christensen was a paratrooper, which they ruled out Cooper couldn't have been, and that he was balding and skinnier and shorter than the Cooper descriptions. But props to Lyle. He's just getting out there. He's like, I'm going to make a movie about this because I'm convinced that my brother is Cooper and that, like, what do you guys think?
Kind of a lame thing to do to your brother on your deathbed.
Are you serious?
Be like, no, I mean like, be like, hey, I'm dying. You can't. I'm beyond the law now that I'm about to die.
Sure.
I have something to tell you, but I'm not gonna tell you. Like that kind of sucks. I'd be kind of mad at my brother. I mean, if my brother was dying, I'd be sad and all.
Well, sure.
But also, like, if he was dying and was like, I got something to tell you, but I'm not going to, and then he died, I'd be angry. Especially if I thought that he was D.B. Cooper, and my entire life, I've been building up to wanting to make a movie about finding D.B. Cooper.
Sure.
That would have been an amazing ending to, like, a movie. Someone on their deathbed being like, I'm D.B. Cooper, and then dying, you could not write that.
Yeah, really. Well,
that's good.
Probably can't write it. It's probably illegal to write it if it's a murder confession.
Assumedly, but
no, yeah.
I'd be angry.
That's crazy. And like your brother, can you imagine? Like, yeah, you get fights with your siblings all the time, but they never think that you're not a murderer, but
like a plane hijacker.
Plane hijacker.
A terrorist.
Yeah, essentially.
Yeah.
So it's just like, oh my gosh, that's my first like red flag. The second one, I agree with what you said, that it's just like when like people have those jokes, and it's like, oh, I need to tell you something, but I'm not going to. Mm-hmm. Or they tell you, like, and then they shut the door so you almost, like, can't get to them. Yeah. That's exactly that, but that is the biggest, like,
tease.
Slap to the face. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
Because he's dead. You're never going to know.
Exactly. Well, he'll know eventually when he gets to those pearly gates.
That's
well, maybe.
True.
Or
we'll see.
Where else?
We'll see.
Yeah.
All right, and finally we have our last suspect here. We have Dwayne Weber. The FBI says that Dwayne Weber, who claimed to be Cooper on his deathbed, yet another deathbed confession. It's a running thing. But this thing was, he was ruled out by DNA testing.
Oh.
Although in 2002, he was still considered a suspect. So it did take some time for them to sort of work this out. Weber also had a criminal history and resembled the description of Cooper. According to the CBS News report, Weber told his wife while hospitalized from kidney disease, which his wife recalls, Weber quotes saying, "Come here, come closer," which she said, "He wanted me about 2 feet from his face." He says, "I have a secret to tell you." I said, "What?" He says, "I'm Dan Cooper." His wife also recalled Dwayne having a nightmare about leaving fingerprints on a plane, and also recalls a knee injury that Dwayne claimed that he got from jumping out of a plane and a library book that Dwayne on Cooper that he apparently wrote notes in.
Nah, it's not him.
I was gonna say the same thing.
Yeah.
I don't think it's him because he's like really into the idea of like.
Exactly.
He might be like. You think he was writing like fanfic?
Like, that's what I mean. He's way too. Is he obsessed with this?
He's a stan.
Yeah.
He's
like
a DB Cooper stan.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He's like those people you hear about in like the criminal shows where it's like he's not like the serial killer, but he envisions himself like he fully becomes it. So I think just a part of his like what's the guy's name?
Dwayne.
Dwayne.
Oh, DB Cooper.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Like I'm DB Cooper. That's like a what? Like that's like a freeze frame cut. Like
In
roll
the movie,
credits.
roll credits. Yeah.
Exactly. But it's just like. No. When somebody to be like, oh yes, I hurt my knee falling out of a plane. He just wants the attention. He wants that clout.
Also, his name's Dwayne. I don't think someone named Dwayne is gonna like do all that.
No.
DB Cooper, I can buy. DB Cooper's a cool name, by the
Sure.
way. I think that's a really cool name.
Well, it's not his name though.
Well, but like the alias of DB
Sure,
Cooper. It's
sure.
cool, DB Cooper. That's a nice thing.
Sure.
But I think a dude named Dwayne. I don't think there's any Dwaynes that are gonna be doing any
The Rock.
hijacking.
No.
Exactly. You're not gonna get. Come on, Dwayne the Rock is not gonna like hijack a plane.
No. Well,
That
maybe in
could
an
be a
action film.
movie.
but
I mean,
yeah.
in a movie, yeah.
Sure. Well, he
But-
did climb that skyscraper or whatever.
He did.
But he's not going to hijack a plane.
Yeah.
I think he's
Not
out.
in real life, at least.
No.
All right. So now I'm going to do some discussion questions with you guys.
Oh, good.
So my first question is, there's this website called Citizen Sleuths, which are made out of regular everyday people, scientists, just regular everyday people who are committed to finding who Cooper is. They've had marginal success, and they're still encouraging people to reach out to them. So what do you think of them and their efforts to unmask DB Cooper all those years later? Because it's been about like over 50 years since this thing has happened.
I think it's endearing. I think it's interesting. Well, I mean, like, in like the nicest way. I think it's
Sure.
endearing that people are still trying to figure out who it is because it's a really interesting crime. Because
Sure.
like no one got hurt unless DB Cooper's dead. I don't know. So like it's a fun. I'll call it a fun crime.
Sure.
I'll call it a fun crime.
Yeah.
I'll go on record as saying the DB Cooper incident was a fun crime.
Yeah.
I think it's endearing that people are still trying to solve who it was. I mean, at what point are you kind of just like, I don't think we're gonna figure it out, and you kind of give up?
Yeah.
Like it might be too late to be honest with you. I don't know.
Sure.
But what about you?
I don't know. I like the kind of. I agree with you. It's kind of endearing. That's the word I would immediately come to mind.
Yeah.
But I think it's like, first of all, the more opinions, the better. Like you could be dedicated to this case and like have it consume your entire life, and you could be missing like a simple little detail. Like, I mean, think about it. How many times have you either like written something or watched something so many times that it's like this consumes your life, and somebody comes along and is like, hey, that's a good point. It's like, oh my God, yeah, like I've never noticed that before. So I think that like by doing this, I mean, hey, what if like we solve the case right now?
Exactly.
Obviously that's gonna happen.
We're experts.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. But I think that it's just like, yeah, bringing in other opinions. And also, yeah, I mean, if these, there are so many people who, would I want to be a criminal justice person? No. I'd be stepping all over the crime scene. You wouldn't want me there.
My fingerprints would get all over it.
Exactly.
I'd be touching stuff.
I'd be poking stuff.
I'd be touching stuff all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, like, would I want to go into that field? No. Somebody could hunt me down if I put them away in jail.
Yeah.
But would this kind of stuff intrigue me, and like it'd be kind of an anonymous like way to kind of help, the detectives and everything? I think it's all in good fun. I don't think anybody's gonna be seriously like, hey, we need your help and everything else like that. So, gives
All in
people a
good fun.
pastime.
That's a good way to put it, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my next question is, why do you think the story of DB Cooper is still relevant in our age? For example, from the teasers of the new Marvel show Loki, it seems that they're going to take on DB Cooper as Tom Hiddleston goes in. That I'm literally going to die when that happens. I love Tom Hiddleston. I love Loki.
You love DB Cooper.
Yes.
We're all going to fall in love with DB Cooper yet again in 2021. But what do you guys think? Why is he so relevant in our day and age?
I'll cover this first. First of all, I did not know they were doing that on Loki. So much more excited now to see Loki because Tom Hiddleston, we'll just leave it at that.
DB Cooper.
DB Cooper, yes. What if Tom Hiddleston is DB Cooper? Like, plot twist. But that's definitely very interesting. I think it's relevant today to see, like, how far we've come. I mean, we talk about, this entire conversation has been, well, we didn't have, fingerprint analysis. Well, we didn't have this. Well, we didn't have this. TSA, all that other stuff. So I think that it's really interesting to see now that, I think it's relevant that it's like, if somebody tried to do this today, first of all, it would be extremely hard. Second off, this is just so unthinkable that, like, that's why they write movies about it. Not that I'm saying it's completely, fictional, because it's happened before, but I think that it's interesting to see, like, how far safety precautions and everything has come on that front, that's why it's relevant, because it would be impossible for somebody to do today. They would get locked up right away, and if it even happens, because it probably wouldn't because of the TSA and everything else like that.
Yeah, the D.B. Cooper story is kind of like a stranger than fiction kind of thing. Like, it obviously can't happen now, like you said, but I think the reason it's kind of stuck around is just because it's really funny. Like, I think it's funny, well, because no one was hurt, okay, that's why I'm saying it's funny.
Sure,
I think it's funny because there's this dude who obviously didn't know what he was doing, and he was like, I just want $200-something thousand. I'm going to hijack a plane with a fake bomb. And then he jumped out of a plane without training or any expertise at pitch black with wind. Like, I think he got extremely lucky.
Yeah.
Well, he either got extremely lucky and got away with it, or he got really unlucky and died, like when he jumped or whatever.
Sure.
But I think it's funny, and I think that's why it stuck around for so long.
Yeah, I definitely agree that these things could happen, but they also said that they've been bouncing around theories, and that's very endearing, and especially now that we're all very interested in true crime. So moving on, do you think this heist could be pulled today and actually get away with it? My opinion, no. We are already at a point where we've had another hijacking with 9/11, and that turned out to be very sad proportion, and it's very sad. But yeah, do you think this could happen today, or was this just lack of time and just not having what we have today in our aerospace stuff?
I don't think it'd happen again. You couldn't do it this easily. And I think people nowadays are smart enough to not even try it because, it's bad to do something like that,
Yeah,
Like,
it's illegal.
federally, it is illegal.
Hello?
You can't do something like that anymore.
No.
It's not the 70s.
It's not the 70s anymore.
Yeah.
No. I agree. I'm sure that eventually somebody will find a way to figure it out. There's things all the time where you think you have everything down packed, and some person, like we said before, some person comes in with a differing opinion and, unweaves all of that. So I don't think it's unfathomable that it would happen again. But I think that there would have to be so many more precautions taken. It could not be a simple note bomb with no panic, 4 parachutes, like all of that stuff. Because I think that if that happened today, as we've seen in light of recent events, that there's so much more, like we said, security before planes, but even when you get onto planes, there's constant communication between people to make sure that everybody on there is safe and everything else like that. So I think it'd be extremely hard, but unfortunately, I don't think it's unfathomable that it would happen again.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to have to start wrapping things up, but I think, I'm going to end with this last question. Out of the theories, which do you think is the most logical?
Oh, gosh.
Who out of our suspects do you think could have done this?
Who do you think?
I think that he just could have died. Like, honestly, if he wasn't skilled, he just died into existence, or he just could have just went like a ghost. Who knows?
Yeah. He obviously caused a lot of hysteria with what he did. Like, I'm sure the flight attendants and the people on that plane probably feared for their lives, which sucks.
Sure.
But part of me is like, I hope he got away with it.
Oh.
Because he would just be the luckiest man in existence.
He'd be living at large, man.
He would be living large. Like, for him to do all that and just dumb luck, survive and live. Mm-hmm. But I think he probably died.
I feel like that too. It's definitely not Dwayne. I think we've ruled that out. It is not Dwayne. Oh my gosh. Dwayne wishes it was him.
He does.
God rest his soul. But Dwayne wishes that it was him. But I agree. I think that that's probably the most logical, because if you look at one person, the DNA wipes them out. If you look at another one, it doesn't look like the person. You've got too many X's in each column. So unfortunately, I feel like he would have had to just fallen somewhere. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I'll probably lean towards that.
Yeah, killed by a bear or something.
Sure. Yeah. It's common.
Yeah, bear.
Yeah, so there are many more theories to who D.B. Cooper is, and that would take hours to comb through because of different circumstances. The FBI has, quote-unquote, closed this case, but they are still taking tips, so it's still very much considered open. So there are people today that are going to be still trying to find out who he is, but until we know but will we ever know a definitive truth? We don't know. So today, this case still remains unsolved.